Hey guys. First of all, I just wanted to say I'm sorry that I wasn't in class yesterday. We had an incident with Denver, thought he had pink eye, so I had to get out of here, and you ended up watching a video about Malala. So just as a review about the video, Malala was a young girl from Pakistan and she wanted to go to school. She made some very public announcements about wanting to go to school, and the Taliban, a militant group that sort of has control over Pakistan right now, they don't like that. They don't like women having rights, and they certainly don't like women getting educated. So they made these public threats against her. And one day, while she was on the school bus on her way to school, they did actually shoot her in the head. Miraculously, she survived. And something we talked about in class was, as awful as that was, it brought attention to her cause. And now we all know Malala as this advocate and spokesperson for education. She actually almost was nominated but she was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize last year. Their reasoning was that she is going to do so many great things in her lifetime that she will get it eventually. She didn't have to get it last year. So pretty interesting. We're going to watch an interview that she did again later when this part of the lesson is over. But for today, I wanted to introduce education and why it is one of the goals of the UN to solve by 2015. So we started by looking at this image, and we pointed out just what we were observing, both good and bad. We said that in the background you see the smokestack, and this doesn't typically look like one of our smokestacks that's burning off steam. I mean, this is burning off oil or some sort of pollutant. The land is very barren, almost like a wasteland. And the teacher, we have to assume this is a classroom, the teacher's holding up a chalkboard held up by a chair and some stones. So they certainly don't have an interactive whiteboard and tablets and laptops the way that we do. The children, they don't have even pencils or notebooks, but something that we did say was a positive is that, one, they're at school and they're being educated, and two, that there's girls in the picture, that girls are actually being educated. Now, the title up here, it says School in Afghanistan. I can't verify that that's true. This is just some guy's website that I found. I think it showed up in a Twitter feed one day, but whether it's Afghanistan or not, the point is that this is a classroom that exists somewhere, and it certainly looks very different from our own. All right, so the next thing we did was we looked at this picture. Let's see, where is it? Hang on a second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to pause for a second. All right, so let's see, where'd my picture go? Here's my picture. Sorry about that. Here's a picture of Abu Kreen Ag Tadima, and we just wanted to talk about, where do we think he is? Do we think that he's happy? What do we think he's saying? And then we wanted to talk about the quote down here on the bottom. We agreed based on the style of dress, the type of architecture, which is some sort of mud brick, that he had to be someplace in the Middle East or Northern Africa, and actually he's in Mali. What is he saying? We talked about how he was probably teaching some kind of a lesson. The kids guessed math because that's what's on the chalkboard back there. At least we think it's math. It looks like it with the pluses and equal signs. And as far as being happy, everyone sort of agreed that he's probably very happy to be able to teach and give these kids an education, but he's probably a little unhappy about the resources available to him, which I think is a very fair argument. And then the quote down here at the bottom, education is a human right with immense power to transform. On its foundation rest the cornerstones of freedom, democracy, and sustainable human development. And I asked the class, did they agree with this or disagree? And I was surprised there were a couple kids who said they disagreed because they thought that education could transform people for the worst. And I guess that is true, but I just see it as such an opportunity. How can we have freedom, democracy, and sustainable human development if we don't learn, if we don't have access to an education? So I really like that quote. All right, the next thing we did was we looked at, this quick reading, which I'll just pause and let you read this for a second. In fact, why don't you pause the video and read it to yourself, and then you can hit play again when you're done reading. Okay, so this reading basically describes the teaching experience of Abu Khrin Tadima. What really stood out to me in this, and as all the students said, was the number of pupils, 250 pupils at the school. Sorry, I meant for that to highlight it, actually sort of underlined there, didn't it? 250 pupils at the school. We talked about how prior to being able to go to school, the community was traditionally pastoralist, meaning that the men dealt with the animals and the herding and the women did the domestic work. Now, what really struck me was that it was the people in the village who wanted to bring an education, who wanted to bring schooling to their village. So they actually built the school themselves, and they had to persuade the government to send them a teacher. And that just struck me as strange because in most countries, or I shouldn't say most, but in our country and other developed countries, it's the government that provides free and public education for the people. The people don't have to go and create that for themselves. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The other thing that I found interesting was that he was teaching a basic health education course. And down here in the second paragraph, it talks about how education not only provides employment opportunities, but it helps the whole family by bringing attention to health issues, business skills, self-confidence, and independence. And I think that health issues ones really stands out to me because, you know, here, I think a lot of people take health class for granted. They feel like it's just an extra class. But that class teaches us how to keep our society clean and healthy. If you look at the big picture, we even have little signs in the hallway that say, wash your hands for 29 seconds when you're done going to the bathroom. And those little lessons keep our society healthy and clean, as I said. And in other countries where they don't know that, that's where disease is running rampant. I don't know, it's just interesting when you think about it that way. Or I don't like getting into this, but next year in health class, you're going to be taking sex ed. And in that class, you learn a lot of things about how to one day make smart decisions. And in countries where that lacks, you see disease and you see a lot of unsafe pregnancies and you see population problems. So again, I'm not getting into that at all. But again, it's a case where health class really is something that helps society. All right, so what else stood out here? I guess just the idea that, you know, teachers' pay is low. The government can't afford these basic resources. Certainly, we all agreed that you couldn't change the title of this article to School in the United States. Not by a long shot. All right, so we then looked at what is the goal for what is the goal that the UN set and where did it come from? So we started, instead of looking at the target first, we actually looked at where does the problem come from. So we started reading this piece down here. Why don't you pause the video, take a second to read through it, and pick out two problems that you think, and they must be data-driven, two problems that led to the creation of the Second Millennium Development Goal. Go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, so hopefully what you saw here was that 72 million children don't go to school, most of these in developing countries. That's a problem. I don't really care for this second goal here, or the second piece here that says 40% of them are girls. I mean, that must be accurate because this was written by the UN, but I feel like that data is a little deceiving. That number might be accurate in some context, but when it comes down to it, more, or I should say most of the children that are not in school are girls. So I feel like that number is a little deceiving there. All right, the second piece that I thought was a good piece of evidence was that 52 out of 155 developing countries have achieved universal primary completion. That's just a third. A third of developing countries actually require that students finish primary school. And when we talk about primary education, it's kind of like a K-6 education. Reading, basic, I should say basic, reading, writing, math, and again with math, we're talking about basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. And then probably some health classes and even some religious courses, depending on what country you're talking about. So anyway, there's the data. That's what led to the goal. And what's the target? What's the breakdown? Basically, the UN's goal is that by the year 2015, all children, boys and girls alike, will be able to complete a full course of primary schooling. So that doesn't just mean that they're going to enroll, but they're actually going to finish. All right. All right, so the other thing with this is we were talking about how is that a goal that's even possible? I mean, with poverty and hunger, we said we were going to have the number of people that were hungry and have the number of people living in poverty. With this, we're saying that all children will go to school. And that's not really what it says. What we're talking about here is that countries have to provide compulsory or mandatory education. There has to be some sort of educational program provided for all students. That doesn't mean everyone's going to go. Certainly, we have problems with attendance in our own country, and there's many things that keep people from going to school, but it shouldn't be that the government is not providing that opportunity. All right, so the last thing we decided to look at is what is stopping kids from going to school then. So we looked at these speech bubbles, and basically, I'll give you time on your own to read through these. I certainly don't have to read them to you, but these are a number of real problems why kids can't go to school. And we read them independently and summarized them. But basically what it came down to is people can't afford to go to school. They don't have time to go to school because they have to work to help the family. Sometimes if you have to provide water for your family, you have to walk miles to get to a water pump and then wait in line once you get there and then walk miles back. Who has time to go to school, or who's able to focus on their homework? In some cases, the school is too far away, or there is no school and the one that you can go to is just too far, or there's no transportation available, or there's not enough teachers. Or if the family can only afford to send a few children, they'll send the boys and not the girls. So there's a number of different reasons. A lot of times it comes down to money, whether you have to pay for school or whether you have to help pay your, to support your family. Money is certainly an issue, which is one reason why extreme poverty is a goal, and that's another connection that we can make between the Millennium Development Goals. So I'll let you take your time to look over that yourself. I think that's about it. Tomorrow, we're going to be in the library looking at more infographics, this time on the state of education, the importance of education, and the progress we've made towards this goal. Also, don't forget that Geography 18 is due tomorrow at the start of class. We're going to go over it. So if that's all, you can email me if you have any questions. If not, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.